We met in college, and Chris and I, neither of us really knew what purity was. It was just something that was very common. Relationships were very common, and sex was very common, and we were both brand new Christians, and so we tried to be pure, but it didn't happen. And I remember being with Chris, and there was a lot of pressure to perform and a lot of expectations, I guess is the right word. And to me, it was completely normal. And in fact, the way that he had treated me was much better than I'd been treated in the past. And so I thought it was great. And we fell in love very quickly. He literally said he wanted to marry me in 7 days. And it was just kind of a whirlwind relationship, and it was fun. We got engaged within, I think, 7 or 8 months, and
moved in together
and started living together, and then right before we got married, something kind of came out of the woodworks. Chris confessed some things to me that it was very obvious that there was a serious issue. And I remember thinking, like, okay, I could leave him. Like, maybe I should. Maybe that's a good idea. But, even though I was new in my faith, I still prayed about it. And I just was like, God, what do you want me to do? And I felt like this was the guy. And he was so broken over it. That I just felt like things were going to be different. And so 2 days later, we got married, and did the newlywed thing.
I never really wanted to be thought of as a sex addict. I hated the term, and I always knew deep down inside that I had a problem, and it started when I was really young. I was first introduced to pornography by a school friend, and I think it was in elementary school. And after that, through the years, I just slowly started viewing porn more and more. I remember messing around with girls when I was probably 15 or 16 years old for the first time, and that just triggered it in a whole nother realm. And from there, it was just a downward spiral. And after I had just been partying and sleeping around, I met Bethany, and we really hit it off from the very get-go. And she was so beautiful, and just we had a lot in common. And so we, within a week, we were like both on the same page, like, man, we really like each other. And we were talking about marriage already, and but inside I was still the same flesh that had been struggling with sex addiction for years, and I just carried it right into that relationship. And all those memories, all those thoughts, all those habits were still with me, and it became evident over the next 2 or 3 years after we got married. And
I don't remember Chris confessing to me the first time about pornography. I obviously knew that there was some sort of an issue when we got married, but again, like, just the culture that I had grown up in was so lustful that I really didn't think that it was not normal. And I remember being in college and going over to my friend's house, and porn being on the television and toys being out and talked about, and it was like a little unusual to me, but not shocking at all.
Over the next few years, it just started getting worse, and I just found myself doing things and saying things to my friends that I never thought I would do and say, and it just I just became engulfed with lust. And I remember on our 4th wedding anniversary, we took a vacation, and we were all excited about it. And we got there, and the very first night, I just remember being in the store and seeing this girl and getting this thought of, would you rather go home with her than your wife? And it just turned into this thought that I couldn't get out of my mind. And later on, I would kind of realize later on in life that it was somewhat related to OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, that I have. But the root of it was definitely lust. And I remember telling Bethany out of guilt, telling her that I'd had that thought, and it just really hurt her deeply. And here we are, supposed to be on a romantic trip, and I'm having these thoughts and confessing them to her. And then I remember this is probably the most hurtful or most traumatic event in my life. Is the next morning I woke up, and I just remember looking at Bethany, and I just didn't feel like I loved her anymore. And I know now that that was lust. I was falling out of lust with my wife. I believe it was God's way of getting my attention, because I needed it. I needed something to wake me up, and that was his way of bringing me back to him, back to Christ. And right after that trip is the first time that I found out about Running Light. And it was through Bethany's friend, Katie Collins. And I remember meeting with Bo, and he was just really loving and understanding, and there was no condemnation at all, and it was just awesome. And started the Way of Purity course on the Setting Captives Free website, and that was really the beginning of my recovery. I still have struggles every day, and I still have thoughts that I don't want, that defy what the truth is. But rather than being selfish and running to Bethany to make myself feel better, I know how to have a relationship with Christ and take those things to him. And he's taught me what the real truth is. And, as much as I do see Bethany as really beautiful now, I'm not perfect.
The biggest thing that I see in Chris that he doesn't always see in himself is that there was not a desire before. Like he's talking about, like he still struggles, but there wasn't a desire to change before. Like there was a deliberate, I will use you. Like there was a deliberate intent to view pornography or treat me a certain way or see me a certain way when we were together. And those things were pursued. Like they weren't fought off. They were, I'm doing this, I want this, I'm taking it. And now the heart is, I don't want that image in my brain, and I'm going to fight it, as opposed to like, what can I think about tonight, I mean, there's a different intent and heart that I see in Chris, and the way that he treats me is so much different. I mean, especially in our intimacy, it's like I can tell that he's not using porn anymore. The way that he touches me, the way that he kisses me, the way that just his eye gaze, just where he looks is not, he's not far away in some other place. Like, and it's, to me, that's beautiful that he chooses me and that he pursues me and that he fights for me and, that he fights for God, and it's not the perfection, that I'm longing for.
I think one of the biggest kind of illusions that we grow up with is the whole happily ever after story in the movies, in Cinderella, and we grow up with these stories, and especially young girls, they get this, idea of what life is going to be like. And I think it's really easy when you're going through something like this to want to just give up because you're thinking, this isn't what life is supposed to be like.
Yeah.
But, it's an illusion. What real love is love through trial. And it's love in spite of imperfections that we have. And
it's what Jesus did for us.
Yeah, we are totally imperfect. I mean, where we couldn't be any further from imperfect, and Christ died for us. That's real love. And, our happily ever after is going to come when Christ comes back for us, and we get to be with our real bridegroom. This marriage right here is supposed to just be a foreshadow or a tool to help us see a small glimpse of what our real marriage is going to be like. What is a marriage that hasn't gone through any trials? God really uses trials to strengthen marriage, and it's not something that we should be afraid of. And He's used this trial to make us closer. We're so close now because of it. And closer to Him.
Yeah. And it really was I remember God giving me this picture of, like you just said, a house that had just been burned down, and there was just ashes, there was nothing left. And I feel like God's built us a castle now, and there's friendship, and there's fun, and there really was a point where, in my heart anyways, where it was just a hope, of something that could be. And I really never ever thought, after everything that had been said and done, that it was gonna be any different. It just was so the same for so long, and things were better, but they weren't whole. And I think for me, when it really, really changed was when we lost the baby. For me, that was when I began to let Chris in again, and it was all the walls that I had and all the fighting, I was too weak to fight anymore. And He'd said, I'll be there for you and I'll take care of you, and I just didn't believe it. And then at that point, it was I really needed tending to and taking care of, and He was so gentle and kind. And
I think it's hard when you're going through such a hurtful thing as being betrayed to want to help your spouse who's just betrayed you. And I think it's so important, though, that you're on the same team. Lust is so fleeting, and it's like a drug. They give you a high and it fades. But love fulfills our soul. It fulfills the purpose that God put in our hearts when He made us. And I think that's the difference. Our Creator made us for love, and without love, life is empty, and we're just always going to be chasing the next high.
It's all of our stories. We're all unfaithful to God, and He loves us anyways. And I don't know why, but His love changes us. Something about it transforms us, makes us better.